Good evening. My name is Barbara Walters, and we're going to talk about Syria. Thank you. And we're going to talk specifically about the women of Syria. There was a man who was a genius who was the head of ABC News, whose name was Roone Arledge, and he put the Olympics on. And what he used to say about the Olympics was, tell me why I should care. Tell me about these individual people and why I should care. We're going to tell you tonight why you should care about the women of Syria. And I have two women representing the thousands, the millions of women who can tell us why we should care and what the conditions are like. First, Mouna Ghanem. Mouna is, am I pronouncing your name right?
Right.
So far, so good. Mouna is a medical doctor. She once headed up the Syrian Ministry for Women, and now she is the leader of a group opposing the Assad regime. She was in Damascus just last week.
Right.
I was in Damascus a year ago. It seemed fairly safe, is it?
That was last year. Now life in Syria, in Damascus in particular, is very difficult compared to last year.
Well, the whole country is now, isn't it?
Yeah.
And also with me, Zainab Salbi, a native of Iraq during the dictatorship of Saddam Hussein. And she is the founder of Women for Women International, dedicated to women affected by war. She's just published her third book, If You Knew Me, You Would Care. Well, I know you and I care. Her father, by the way, was Saddam Hussein's pilot. And before she was 20, this is just a little background tidbit, she was forced to marry a man that she didn't love to get her out of the circle of Saddam Hussein. You're out of that marriage and out of Iraq and out of Saddam Hussein's circle.
I'm much happier.
Right? Okay. I want to talk a little bit about one of the women of Syria who is the most mysterious, and that is Asma, the wife of Bashar al-Assad. I have met her before. I went to Syria 4 times. And the last time that I was there, I was doing an interview with President Assad, and I met her privately. When I came back to New York and showed the interview, I was told I could not show her picture. And nobody seems to know where she is and where she's disappeared to. Does anybody know? The beautiful Asma al-Assad?
I think she's still in Syria.
I think she's still there, yeah? Well, it was interesting that I was not allowed even to mention her. I just want to show you, before we talk, a little bit of an interview I did a year ago. This was after the brutal crackdown had begun, and Assad was saying, no, 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 it's not the government, it's, you know, it's other people. What torture? What are you talking about? What do you know? You know, you're just being duped. Let me show you just a couple of seconds of that interview, and then we'll launch into the women, okay?
There was no command to kill or to be brutal.
People went from houses to houses. Children were arrested. I saw those pictures.
But to be frank with you, Barbara, I don't live here. How did you know all this? We have to be here to see. We don't see this. So it cannot depend on what you hear in the United States.
I saw reporters who brought back pictures.
Yeah, but how did you verify those pictures? Yeah, so it's, that's why we are talking about false allegations and distortion of reality.
Yeah, so I was duped, along with the rest of the world and along with the millions who are now being killed and tortured in Syria. So I want each of you to tell me, because we are talking about women all around the world, why should we care in particular about the women of Syria? Do you want to start with me, Zaid?
Well, if we want to have a stable Syria, we need to care about women in Syria. In my opinion, they hold the only hope in Syria. There are more than 1 million refugees in Syria, 80% of which on average are women and children. Out of the 70,000+ Syrians who have been killed, the majority of which are women and children. Of all the fighting factors and all of these things, the only ones who are not killing and raping and pillaging are women, and the only ones who are keeping the possibilities of hope for a peaceful Syria, to keep a country that is known to being secular and educated and civil countries, the ones who hold that hope are women. That's why we need to care about women.
Is what we want most, Mouna, to overthrow Assad?
I think the first slogan appeared by the Syrian people when they went to demonstration, they want freedom and justice. And I think what is happening now to women in Syria is a reflection of what will happen in the whole region in the future. Women issue is not only a gender issue. Women issue is a security issue. It's a foreign policy issue. So I think we should always focus on how we could bring democracy to Syria, and not only how to get rid of one dictatorship and replace it by another one. We should focus on how we bring security, democracy, freedom to Syria.
But women are not in the negotiating process.
No,
it's like, you know, we'll negotiate, but we don't really need you. So how do we get them involved?
Women should be involved at all stages, because again, women involvement is a reflection if we are going to achieve democracy or not. And I have a slogan with my organization that there is no democracy without women. So if we are talking about achieving democracy for Syria or for the all Arab Spring countries without women, this is only a lip service. This will not help, the democracy will not help the political system in the region.
But let's put that in perspective. There are only 4 women in the Syrian opposition or the interim government out of 73 men. If increasing that number of women representation is not only Syrians need to do it, the oppositions need to do it, as well as the Americans and the international community can help in pushing that issue away.
We hear about women being raped. Are they being raped by Assad's people, by the rebels, and is that really the case? Is that now a danger? And we also hear that some of the mothers are having their children, their daughters marry older men so that they will not be raped. What is the condition?
Well, the best statement I heard about what's happening to women in Syria is from a young Syrian woman activist who said the Assad government are oppressing women, and the opposition, or at least elements of the strong oppositions, the religious one, are marginalizing women. Now, the government is using rape as a way, as a tool, as a political tool, but that's rape usually, that's how it's used in moments of violence. We're not talking about the same volume as what happened in Bosnia, where 20 to 60,000 women in Bosnia were raped. We don't know the numbers in Syria. But are women being raped in the prisons of Syria? Yes. Are political oppositions, when they get caught by the government, do they get raped? Yes. Do we know the volume of this? No. And that we don't know, both because we really don't know and because sometimes the people do not talk about it. And so it is an issue, and it is an issue being used to in my opinion, to actually promote sectarian fighting to trigger that sectarianism. So a lot of the Sunni women, if they are raped in the prisons, it triggers the sectarianism in that process of violence.
Unfortunately, violence was committed by both sides on women. Rape and violation of the human rights of the Syrian women committed everywhere, in the prisons and also by the opposition, by the armed opposition. Now we see a lot of new fatwas by some sheikhs which allow this marriage only for the sake of jihad, where they bring women only to satisfy the sexual desire for the rebellions. And this is now a big issue in Tunisia, because we have cases of 12 women who were deported to Syria just to have sex with the rebellions. So, and also we have a lot of cases of rape between all sides, between Sunnis, between Alawites, everybody exercising his increased level of violence over women. And this is why I link the women issue to the violence issue, to the politics. It's not only women, an issue is by itself. No, it's very much related to the increased violence in Syria, which was not faced by the whole world. The whole world is seeing the violence in Syria and doing nothing.
Well, that's what I want to add. I mean, it's not just violence against women. I mean, the whole country is in an uproar. By the way, I don't know what time we're supposed to finish, so before somebody gets violent with me, can anybody just tell me, I'm looking at a clock, how much time we have to talk?
You still have 12
Do you know?
12 minutes.
We have 12 minutes from now, so it's 12:25.
We can
you bear with us? Okay. What would you like us to do? There is all this business about Syria. I did an interview with President Obama in December, and he talked about aiding the rebels, but he didn't say how. What do you think the role of the United States to do, not just about the women of Syria, but about the country?
I think the United States should keep its role in the world as an advocate for democracy, and they should look into the Syrian case into a deep way, because my personal view that the American and the whole world just looked at the case in Syria in a very simplified way. They didn't understand the complexity of the situation in Syria, and they have delegated this issue to other countries to handle it, like Qatar and Saudi Arabia, and now everybody is watching the increased violence without thinking how to solve this politically. I'm coming from a political movement, which believes that this issue should be solved through political process towards democracy transition, and not only to get rid of al-Assad or to replace it by another body. So what I think that the Americans should care more about the Syrian case, should look seriously, and I think it's a stigma for the whole countries, for the whole international world, to allow this violence in Syria.
Okay, but to be very specific, yes, we should care. And one of the reasons we're talking here is to say, why should we care? And why should we care specifically about the women? But suppose you could sit down tomorrow with our president. What would you advise?
The Americans' absence or lack of decision-making about what to do in Syria has created a gap, a political gap. A gap that has created a political gap in the Syrian situation. Yeah. A gap that has been then filled by Qatar and Saudi Arabia and other governments.
Well, what would you like us to do?
I think America has to interfere, actually. Now, that does not mean military, but it does have to have a position. It does have to get the Russians on board. There is no particular strong position the Americans are holding. In my opinion, the Americans can influence getting Russians on board. It can influence a negotiation status. That is what we need in Syria. We need to get all parties in the negotiating table. It can also include women in a significant way in the political process. That's what Americans can help also, when we are sitting in the negotiating table, to include as many women as possible. The lack of the silence rather, of America is creating a political gap. Now, why this is important and how this is connected to women. In the Middle East, women at the moment are the battlefields. A battlefield of an idea of...
in the Middle East.
In the Middle East, is particularly in post-Arab Spring countries. Now remember, Syria started as part of the domino effect of the Arab Spring. People wanted to get rid of the dictator. Now Syria's case is the most unfortunate case because it has now led to a war that killed more than 70,000 people. Now, we need to care, because if we are worried about fundamentalism in the region, we need to care about what's happening to women.
Zainab, if I have an advice to the President of the United States, I would say the United States should agree with the Russian on putting pressure on the regime so that they accept the Syrian regime, accept negotiation. Because the
United States should put emphasis, or should put their power to talk to the Russians to do what?
To put pressure on the Syrian regime to accept negotiation, to accept getting into a political process. Russian and American should agree that they should solve this case.
You want Assad to go into some kind of negotiation. He has not so far, when he's been pressured to do that.
And he's not prepared. Of course he's not prepared, and he is not willing also to change the regime. And there is no one single indicator says that Bashar al-Assad is ready for negotiation. This is why I'm saying that the American and the Russian should agree to put political pressure, not military pressure, on the Syrian regime so that they accept to go into this.
Do you want Assad to be overthrown?
Of course he should, but this is not the ultimate goal. This is a process. I want him to go because he's an obstacle towards achieving democracy.
But you want him to go in a democratic way. You don't want him to be pushed out.
I want the regime. My focus is the regime, which is a symbol for the dictatorship, not only one person. I want the regime to be involved in the transitional period and not leading this transitional period toward achieving toward democratic life in Syria.
What Assad holds is a tension that we're seeing as a consequences of the Arab Spring. Tunisia happened. Egypt happened, Libya happened, and it was a domino effect, right? It reached Assad. he has to leave. If he doesn't leave, he's a holding block.
But yes,
How does he leave?
the Syrian should decide through a negotiation table how he is going to leave.
Right.
Do negotiations,
The reason she wants negotiations is because the one power that's rising up more strongly than the others is the Islamist power. And so if he's overthrown in a military way, then the one rising power in the region, not only in Syria, in the region, is the Islamist power. What the Islamists are doing, the first thing that they are doing is attacking women. Now, if we think of women as a bellwether for the society, we need to pay attention to what happens to them.
So the devil you know sometimes is better than the devil
No.
But if Assad, okay, well that's sort of...
We all want Assad to leave.
You know, if the Islamists come in and we're talking about women and they are worse for women, there are people who do say, you know, well, I mean, Assad is terrible, but what will happen to the country when he goes? Civil war, this and that, women...
No, he should go in a way that doesn't cause disintegration of the country. If we believe that if Assad overthrown by power, and I don't think this will happen, I think the whole country will disintegrate it, and this is
Do not overthrow him by power. He has to be overthrown. He has to leave by negotiation.
He has to leave by negotiation, and this should be decided by Syrian people. And what we think that he should be involved, the regime should be involved in the transition period, but not leading the transitional period. And then should be preparation, a very short period for preparation for election, and then we can really go to achieve democracy. And what we think that we should work against everything which face us or prevent the Syrian people from achieving democracy and social justice, human rights. And this include Al-Assad and the other jihadists and other group who is important to us by Qatar and by Turkey and by Saudi Arabia.
The reason she wants Assad, in my opinion, to move through transition as opposed to force is because then there is a possibility of a real sectarian
and
war.
It's not possible. We have been fighting for 2 years by military forces. It's not possible. Now we have balance of power on the ground. I'm coming from Damascus, I'm coming from the country. I see that there is a balance of power, and there is no way that we can win military over this regime.
What we are talking about, and you know what has been said, is you get rid of Assad, you have a civil war. You have all of these different tribal sects, including his own, which is a minority sect, and unless he leaves and there's negotiations from your lips to whoever, nothing's going to happen. So if you can see any solution, I'm giving you a lot of power and 3 minutes to answer, what would you suggest?
Honestly, I would get all the women from all the sides getting together in a room for a week, and I would listen to what the women have to say. And I'm not only being symbolic, I really would listen to what the women have to say. I think women have a grip on a situation, on a daily situation.
Yeah, but how are you going to do that?
No different than what the Liberian women have done.
I'm doing this. We have established a movement called Syrian Women Make Peace, and this movement includes women from all political background, from all sectors, from all religious, from all walks of life in Syria. And we agreed that we need to raise our voice and to tell the whole world that we really need peace. We are tired of being killed, raped, displaced, and being refugee. Myself, I have 2 little boys in a refugee camp in Europe. I didn't live with my children for 1 year because I stay in Syria, they are in the camp. We want peace to be achieved, and we want democracy, not only peace. And we have to do this in a very, very delicate way, that we ensure that we achieve what we want without replacing the regime.
Negotiations.
Yes.
Yeah. We have an audience here of people who really care and who are active and who are involved, and we are talking not just about women of Syria, but about Syria. And I know we're asking huge questions without answers, but if these people here could have their opinions expressed and so forth, what would you hope it would be? What do you see as any kind of solution now?
We've got to pay attention to what's happening to Syria, and the American government has to take a role in helping peace agreement in Syria. I do agree that we need to do it through negotiations. We cannot afford neither the former regime to stay, nor can we afford for Islamists to come and take over, frankly speaking. We do need to support the women's voices, not on a refugee conditions only, not only in a humanitarian sense. We need to support women's political voices to be heard, because they have actually the most likelihood to have a peaceful solution solutions that does not entail fighting. These are the takeaway. And I would remind people, there are more than 70,000 people have been killed. We don't know how many women have been raped. There are more than 1 million refugees right now in Syria. The heat is on in the region, not only in Syria, all over the region, and we need support.
Not to mention the women who are the ones who are suffering most in the refugee camps. It is the women and the children who are the...
Yeah, there has been a lot of reports about forced marriage, prostitution, AIDS cases in the Za'atari camp and also in the refugee camp in Turkey. And these women and these children were not given the needed protection, needed help. Many children died frozen in the Za'atari camp because there is no electricity and it was very cold in Jordan at that time. I mean, now it's time to say enough is enough, and we want peace and we want to stop all this violence in Syria, and again and again and again, not only peace but also democracy and achieving human rights for Syrian people, because they deserve it. We are like all other people on earth who really enjoy the democracy, and I think Syrians have fought a lot, and we have more than 70,000 persons were killed just for to achieve democracy and achieve this social justice.
I thank you both for caring. Well, you can see how they feel. Not just for caring, but for actually doing things about it. Both of you, very brave, having been in that country, and it's a beautiful country, by the way, and seeing what is happening. And so far, we have not really been that active even in the negotiations. I appreciate your talking with us. I'm sure you do as well. Thank you for your time.